Bye.
Have a safe trip, Linda.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Yeah, see you on Zoom later. I mean, another later day, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is it getting close to 9 o'clock yet? Not quite. We'll give people a few more minutes to get their computer
Hey, Jay, just,
up and running.
Tony, hey, Jay, just so you know, I'm going to have to get off at 10:55. I have another Zoom call at 11, so I'll hang in here.
I don't
until
think you'll
10.
have any problem getting off by 10:55, Tony. It looks to me like a pretty short agenda today.
Whichever. Okay, I just to let you know, hey, I'm good for 10:55. So
Good.
whatever.
Good.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi there.
Okay, well, I guess it's 9. Shall we start a roll call? Well, no, first I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 14th meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. I am Jay Brown, president of the panel, and as always, will serve as the monitor for today's meeting. We'll start off with a roll call. David Mintz, are you here yet?
I am here. Good morning.
Hi, David. Then let's see, we have Linda Laird. Linda, you're here.
Here.
Sandy Stillwell.
I'm
Hi,
here.
Sandy. Tony Lappy is here.
Yeah.
Ken Suarez, our newest member. Ken, are you among us yet?
I think Ken's traveling.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully he can join us later.
Okay.
Then Ken Gill advised me previously he was going to be unable to attend today's meeting, as did Ann Brady. Marguerite Maville, you're here. I think I heard you, Marguerite.
Yes, I'm here. Good
How are
morning.
you this morning? Bruce McDonald.
Yep, here.
And John Jensen.
Yeah,
I know
I'm
he's
here.
traveling. You're here, and you're going to attend as much as you can. Is that right? You're traveling?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'll be able to hang in there. Thanks, Jay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. I don't think we're going to have a very long meeting today, hopefully, but we will see as we progress through the agenda. Let's start off with the update from the Sheriff's Department. Rich Zeitman. Rich, are you around?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Rich.
Come on, Ray.
So I just have a couple things to report. Things mostly are going well here on the island. What we have been noticing was some folks riding off-road ATVs along Captiva Drive lately. We've got some reports, and we've also personally witnessed that happening, which is, I just want to let the Islanders know that that's illegal to drive your off-road side-by-side ATVs on Captiva Drive on the roadway or the beaches.
Okay, would that hold true even if they were registered and had a license plate?
So those are the low-speed golf carts.
Yeah.
And those are fine. These are actually ATVs, like side-by-sides, if you're familiar with those.
Yes, I am.
Those are not registered. They're not licensed. They don't have the proper road equipment with, brake lights and headlights and license plate and things like that.
Are you having any trouble with the ATVs tearing up the beaches?
We noticed very few, but we have noticed that, and we've responded and investigated those. Not often. What we found this past month was on the actual roadway. A couple were coming from Sanibel, and there might be some construction workers that were driving them. So we just wanted to report that to the panel.
Okay.
To let you know that we've noticed that, and we're enforcing it.
Okay. Very good. What else do you have for us, Rich?
We also are continuing our enforcement of illegal parking. And a couple of meetings before, we had reports of people parking along Captiva Drive, whether they're looking at the sunset, whether they park off the road and then they walk over to the beach during sunset time. And
Yeah, I've seen a lot of parking on occasion, where Sunset Captiva used to be, right before you get on Blind Pass.
yes. Yeah, so we're enforcing that. We're educating the public to explain that that's not acceptable and that's illegal and that can't be done. And we're expecting, I guess, Memorial Weekend and other holidays and weekends throughout the summer that might happen again. So we'll continue to enforce still the illegal parking
Right.
on the island.
Okay.
So that's about what we have to report for this month.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rich. We appreciate you attending our meeting and giving us the updates. Next, our fire chief, Jeff Powell. Jeff, are you around?
I am. Good morning, Jay. How are you
Hi,
today?
Jeff.
I keep mine short, but I do have one big announcement. Unfortunately, Ann's not here, so she asked me to do it today. But as of about a week or so ago, the landing zone on the Rauschenberg property is back up and functioning. So thank you to the Rauschenberg Foundation for making that happen and the work that they put in serve the community. Really appreciate that.
That really is good news.
Yeah, absolutely.
And does that sound like it's going to be a permanent ability for you to land there, or?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long-term solution. They did a lot of work just regrading that whole property to make this happen. Brought in a bunch of base rock, a dedicated area. So it's not just a grassy area that they're giving us access to. They actually had Walsh put in a bunch of work and everything else to make it a permanent area for the future.
Well, that's good news. I'm glad Rauschenberg was able to figure out a way to make that work, because I know that's something we had relied on quite a bit in the past, having that landing area.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're glad to have that back, and just want to thank them for making that happen. The only other thing I have today is keep in mind when you're out on the water, or if you've got friends in town, or if you're a business that rents, we've had a lot of marine accidents and safety issues out there lately. I know it's starting to be that time of year. It warms up and everybody wants to get back out on the water. The water's getting warm and they get out there, but there's been a lot of serious accidents around the islands here of Pine Island, Captiva, Upper Cap area. So if you're one that's out there, if you've got family that's out there, just please be safe. Keep in mind if you're going out long distances or whatnot, make sure you're telling somebody where and when you're going, so they expect you back and all those good things. So just keep that marine safety in mind. It's been a rough start to the season.
Are you noticing, are these primarily rental boats as opposed to, or can you not?
So actually the last few serious accidents have been more privately owned boats. We did have a rental boat with a propeller strike. And then we did have some that were privately owned. So it's both.
Okay.
We find more with the rental boats. It's a lot more of people not knowing the area and getting lost and those kinds of things. But it happens to both.
Right. And then, of course, I think that Florida passed a law a number of years ago that if you were born after January 1st of 1988, you had to take a boating course and be certified as a competent boater in order to drive a boat.
You do. It's there's no hands-on involved in it, so it is pretty basic, but they did there is that attempt and there is a course that you do have to take.
Okay.
So that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me today.
Anything for Jeff?
No.
Okay, Jeff, thanks for that report.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. Up next, CEPD update. Linda? can you give us a brief overview of what's going on at CEPD these days?
Yes, I can. One is the referendum on the 23rd. Urge you all to go out and vote. This is not authorizing us to spend 25 million. It's authorizing us to get bonds to allow us to do the work when it's required. That's one. Number two, we put the nourishment out for bid. The bids came in significantly higher than expected. Part of the reason is that equipment is being transported from up north, and we were going to be bearing the brunt of that whole cost. So we are now working with the county and other municipalities so that we don't pay all of that cost. And we are also pushing back hard on the vendors. Our view is that the beaches are in okay shape, so nothing is urgent, and we'll try pushing off a renourishment as long as possible to save money for the taxpayers. Okay. We also had a public meeting on Thursday, which was the first step in our planning for the base side, and it was to get public input. We've also got a steering committee put together, and so that's moving forward. Those are all the key items.
Okay, and who was on that steering committee, Linda? Do you recall?
Well, I don't know exactly.
Okay. Anybody have anything for Linda?
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Okay, thank you for that, Linda. Matt DePaulis, SCCF update.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Just a quick one for you today. It's been a little quiet over here. The lake is actually looking pretty good. It's dipped below 14 feet last week. It's at 13.72 right now and still dropping. So this was all aiming towards the Army Corps' goal of 13 feet by June. It doesn't look like we're going to hit that, but if everything stays pretty dry, we might get close. So that should hopefully stave off any large releases, barring any massive storm events or huge water events prior to the start of wet season. And we are transitioning out of that El Nino. So things are looking pretty good. We're getting less than 2,000 cubic feet per second at S79, which is the Alva structure where they measure these releases from right now. And that's what's resulting in the nice water that we're seeing. And there's no real detrimental algae blooms that we're seeing in the river right now. There's been a couple blue-green popping up, but they've been able to keep the water moving enough to break up those blooms. No real red tide. Salinity is looking good all over. So all in all, it's been pretty good.
So am I getting too carried away if I say it looks like we might have a reasonably good summer without a major algae outbreak, or am I projecting?
I think it's a little premature to go that far right now, but I think for the next couple weeks, it looks good at least.
Okay.
Yeah, all it's going to take is one really big event, one big storm. We are seeing blue-green algae popping up in the lake right now, and some of that is toxic. So if that were to get released due to necessity from flood control, if we get back-to-back large thunderstorms or any major storms moving through that area, that could result in algae hitting our estuary. But
right,
as long as nothing goes wrong, we're in a good place.
Okay, and where are we? I learned about the sugar industry trying to bring a lawsuit to stop that reservoir that we need so badly. Do you have any update on that, or?
Yeah, no, there hasn't been any major developments recently, except for the petition that Captains for Clean Water circulating.
Right. That's
I think the
how I found out
petition's
about
doing
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the petition's doing a great job of bringing attention to the issue. really submitting a petition isn't going to head off any legal challenges that are already underway. There's been a lot of money invested already. So, but I think having the petition out there, getting people to sign, getting people knowledgeable about it is really important. It is an issue where the sugar industry, for people who don't know, are intervening in the construction of the EA reservoir, making the claim based on the water savings clause that's inherent to the Central Everglades Restoration Project that they're really entitled to all of the water from that reservoir and additional water from reservoirs that haven't been conceived of yet, based on their legal reasoning, rather than sending that water where it should be going to the Everglades. So it's really waiting for its day in appeals court. It's already been through at the first stage where a judge sided with the Army Corps, saying Sugar's interpretation of what the water savings clause is ridiculous on its face. So hopefully the appeals court will see it the same way. It really is a life or death moment for Everglades restoration based on how this goes, because if it's decided that the water savings clause reads in the way that the sugar industry would like it to read, effectively nothing can ever reduce the amount of water that the industrialized agriculture and other water supply needs south of the lake feel that they're deserved. And that means nothing, including any water loss due to rising temperatures, which leads to excessive evapotranspiration, anything else going on in the system that would reduce the overall water quantity of the system, based on Sugar's understanding, means we need to make up that difference for them, even if it's nature that's doing the removal of the water from the system. So hopefully the judge will see it the same way. If you haven't signed the petition and want to, Captains for Clean Water is putting it out there. They did a pretty good write-up too. We've done a couple write-ups on it, and if you have more direct questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about this issue more.
Okay. Thank you for that. Matt, do you have anything else you want to bring us up to date on?
That covers it from my end.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that takes us to David Mintz and a review of all of our efforts to regain control of our height and density on Captiva. David, you want to give us an update?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I basically have four separate subject matter related things to report. The first thing is that we have two important dates on May 24th. The first is that, as everyone remembers, we filed a complaint in the circuit court seeking to enforce the settlement agreement that took place between the CCA, the county, and Mapner Properties back in 2003, which limited the development on South Seas, and basically stated that the county would not be permitted to issue any building permits greater than 912 units on South Seas at any time. So we filed that complaint seeking to enforce that settlement agreement against the county. And the county has until May 24th to answer that complaint. When that complaint is answered, the judge will have to determine whether he can decide the issue on the papers, or whether he will seek or permit discovery, or whether he'll hold a hearing. We don't know the answer to that yet, but the complaint has been filed and the county has until May 24th to answer. So that's number one. Number
David,
two.
what would possibly be a theory that says that agreement is not enforceable or is no longer in effect?
Well, one is they can argue. I mean, I don't want to, spend a lot of time giving what their potential defenses would be. But one of them is that the county didn't have the authority back in 2003 to make that agreement. I mean, that would be embarrassing, but that could be one argument they can make, that the county back in 2003 didn't have the authority to bind future boards of county commissioners. I don't think that will work, but they can make that argument. They could argue that it's 20 years ago and 20 years is too long. They can make a sort of a statute of limitations argument. And there are a couple of other defenses one can imagine that they can make. None of them I don't think would make the county look good, but they could make those arguments. There may be an argument there, what's called a contract zoning argument, which is that under Florida law, the counties are not permitted to make agreements with developers that are basically zoning agreements. In other words, you have to go through the hearing process and public process by which you rezone properties. And there's been some talk that this settlement agreement constituted a contract zoning, but that is just not the case. This settlement agreement was just seeking to enforce a zoning action that had taken place correctly in the past, and that was being violated. So it really doesn't constitute zoning, a contract zoning, and therefore I don't think that's a defense that will hold water. So those are my uneducated answer to your question. But you know, there's always defenses that people can raise, and we'll see what the judge does. I think the attorneys who are handling this matter believe that the decision should be made on the language of the settlement agreement, which could not be any clearer than it is. The county can issue no building permits beyond 912 at any time on that property. So we'll see what the court's going to do with that. I hope that answers your question, Jay.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's just very hard for me to understand, you know, how you could say that agreement does not, you know, doesn't remain enforced. I mean, you've had many property owners relying on that agreement and making purchasing decisions and how they're, you know, going to spend their money and where they want to live, and you know, all the people that relied upon that. It would seem to me to be really egregious to somehow say that you shouldn't have relied on that.
Yeah, we tried to get the complaint filed before Judge Brown, because we thought he would give us a fair decision. Judge J. Brown, I'm talking about. We weren't able to do that. Okay. So anyway, that's number one. Number two, as people recall, we filed a petition contending that the code amendments that exempted South Seas and only South Seas from the height and density limitations that apply to everybody else on Captiva violated the LEED plan, which required that the amendments had to be consistent with the historic development pattern on Captiva, and that these changes, which allowed South Seas developers to increase density in hotel rooms on South Seas by 286% on their property. And if you looked at South Seas as a whole, 48% on South Seas, 48% increase, and to allow building heights up to between 45 and 75 feet above base flood elevation, which is much, it's almost the double, more than double the height actually than they're permitted today at the end of the day. We argued that those code amendments violated the LEED plan. And we filed with the county. The legal process allows you to get before an administrative law judge and have a full-blown trial over that issue with expert witnesses and with testimony taken under oath, with discovery, with interrogatories, with depositions. But to get to that stage, you had to go through two preconditions. The first condition is you had to file the petition making that claim that the plan code amendments violate the plan with the county. And the county responded saying that the Captiva Civic Association and the Protect Captiva Coalition did not have standing to make this claim before an administrative law judge. They denied that. As soon as they made that, as soon as they answered our petition with those answers, we were able to file with the Department of Commerce. And we filed the same petition with the Department of Commerce, and they had 30 days to answer that petition in the same way that the county did. As you recall, the Department of Commerce had a hearing, what they called an informal hearing, would basically listen to the county for half an hour and listen to our attorney and our witnesses for half an hour. And they issued a decision, I believe it was on May 4th, or maybe it was May 6th. And it was a decision that we discussed before, and we sent this out to the public so they know what happened, but it was a decision which cannot be enforced. It was basically the precondition to get to a judge who will issue an enforceable final agreement, final decision. But the Department of Commerce issued a 19-page written decision, and the written decision spent most of the 19 pages on whether or not the CCA had standing to contest those code amendments. And the Department of Commerce argued that the CCA, in fact, does have standing, and that we can, they agree that we can proceed before an administrative law judge. Now, even if they said we didn't have standing, we would be able to proceed before an administrative law judge under the statute, but they agreed we had standing. And then with respect to the consistency issue, they argued, they wrote that the code amendments are, could be seen as fairly debatable, consistent with the plan. So they did not come out and say we were right. In fact, they said that they thought it was fairly debatable that the county could be right, that the code amendments were consistent with the plan. The problem with their written decision is that their reasons for saying that it could be consistent with the plan were so wrong, were so patently incorrect, that I frankly believe that the decision is going to help us before an administrative law judge. What they said, the first thing they said is that the county considers the administrative interpretation, which limits all development on South Seas to 912 units. They said that the county considers that agreement as the controlling document that outlines the current standards and development potential of the South Seas Island Resort. Now, if that were true, there would be no litigation.
Right.
Because we're saying that there are 912 units, and that's what you're entitled to, and develop your South Seas with those 912 units. If the county's position was that was the extent of development permitted on South Seas, we wouldn't be here today on this issue. So that's number one. The other thing they said that was amazing is that they accepted the county's claim that the 912 units don't include hotel units, but only the condos. And that is so wrong, because the administrative interpretation makes it absolutely clear that hotel units are included. And the 1973 downzoning document that was submitted and approved by the county when it was submitted by South Seas made it as clear as day that hotel and motel units are included in the 912 units. It was absolutely perfectly clear. And even when South Seas just submitted their application for the new development, which we'll talk about in a second, they agreed that hotel units were part of the 912. So they're trying to get out from under the 912, but they agreed that hotel units were part of the 912. So the county just got that, I'm sorry, the Department of Commerce just got that completely wrong. And the last thing that the Department of Commerce said is that the 3 units per acre on Captiva doesn't apply to hotel and motels, and that the other hotels on Captiva are not subject to the 3 units per acre limitation. Well, there's nothing that could be more wrong than that statement, because the Captiva code says specifically that there are 3 units per acre for hotels and motels, as Tony Lappy knows, as John Jensen knows, as everybody knows on Captiva, that the 3 units per acre apply to both residential dwelling units and hotels. So, and Sandy knows that too. So I mean, it was sort of interesting to see how wrong the Department of Commerce got this. And I guess our position is, if you only provide a half an hour to people to give an overview and you're listening to it, you're going to get things wrong. So anyway, to make a long story short, we have until May 24th to file for the administrative hearing. And our attorneys at this point are preparing for that hearing. They're preparing their expert witnesses, and we're hopeful, and I don't want to say fairly confident, but we are as confident as one could be under the circumstances that our case is a strong case and better than the county's case on this matter. So that's number.
There's there has to be an administrative hearing. That's correct? This is not something where
There's no
they
discussion.
choose to have an administrative hearing or not. They have to have one.
Right. The state statute provides our right to petition for administrative hearing and have a full-blown trial. And the 2 preconditions is that we give the county and the Department of Commerce an opportunity to weigh in, maybe resolve the matter before it goes to a judge and there's a full-blown trial. And we've met those 2 preconditions, and there's nothing that can stop this that can stop us from having a full-blown administrative hearing. That is correct. You are right. So that's number 2. Number 3, on April 25th, the county planning director, the county planning department, rejected for a second time the plan application submitted by Timbers and South Seas to increase the building heights and density and add the extra 435 hotel rooms to that plan application was rejected as insufficient for a second time. As you remember, it was submitted back in December, the end of December. The county rejected it as being insufficient. The South Seas then submitted a new revised petition of about 300 pages, and the county on April 25th rejected that second revised petition as also being insufficient. And it's interesting what the reasons are that the county has stated as the cause of the insufficiency. One of them is what we've been saying all along, because the South Seas is coming in and they're saying we're vested for 272 units under the administrative interpretation, but now we want 435 hotel units on top of what the administrative interpretation would permit. So we want what the administrative interpretation gave us and called that vested, and they want additional 435, which would not be permitted under the administrative interpretation. And the county is saying again for the second time to South Seas, explain to us how you're going to have it both ways. If you want something that the administrative interpretation doesn't permit and you want to rezone that property from scratch, how can you say you're vested? And this is a very serious issue for the community and for South Seas, because the reason they're doing this is because remember, they have 120 acres out of the 304 acres. Of those 120 acres, about, I don't know, only 80 acres are uplands. The rest are wetlands. Under current comprehensive plan and codes, wetlands don't count for counting density purposes. Back in 1973, when they downzoned the property and gave you 912 units, they took 304 acres and multiplied it by 3. But those 304 acres had a lot of wetlands. In fact, there are only about 178 acres that weren't wetlands. So today you would never get 912 units. So 912 units, if I were frankly South Seas, I'd take it and run to the bank with it. And we believe also that that's vested. They've had it for 50 years. That's vested. People relied on it. So we would support the 912 units. The problem is if you rezone that property, you may not even get, South Seas would not get 912 units. Even if you got 178 acres of uplands and you multiply by 3, which is the maximum, you get 3, that's like 534 units. There are already 640 units built out on the South Seas Resort, not including anything that Timbers wants to build because they've demolished everything. So you take a big risk when you say we want to rezone that property from scratch. You may not even get what they had before. And which is why they're saying we want to have what we had before. We want to call that vested, and we want to have 435 in addition, but they want it both ways. And the county is saying, please explain to us how that works. We don't understand the theory that it gives you the 272 vested when you want to rezone that property. So that's the first thing that the county is saying in rejecting their revised application. The other thing they said is that South Seas, you keep on forgetting that the LEED plans policy 23.2.4 requires the county to limit development to that which is in keeping with the historic development pattern on Captiva. They have to be consistent with that, and that's part of the reason we're challenging the code amendments in the administrative hearing. But the county is also asking South Seas how to be consistent. How are they consistent with that? Because you had 50 years of 912 units. Now you want 1,347 units. How is that consistent? And they have not answered that. The other things that the county has said to them is that traffic and trip generation estimates don't fairly reflect the development that's being proposed. They didn't count the hotel units and the employee and the elimination of the employee housing units, which are going to generate a lot of traffic as you have employees commuting. So they say the traffic impact statement is not sufficient. They also say you don't have a letter from Island Water that there's sufficient potable water for the project. And they also say that they're asking, their deviations that they're requesting, and they're asking deviations for parking, buffers, open space, signage, and lighting. They're saying they have not provided sufficient justification for any of those deviations. And they also just said they don't explain how the increase in intensity on South Seas will impact the existing residential dwelling units that already exist and are owned by other associations. So those are some, and only some, of the reasons why their application was rejected as insufficient. They can't go forward before a hearing examiner and have their hearing on their plan application until they're found sufficient. There may be a way they can bypass the sufficiency requirement, but the problem with that is that the county staff has to make a recommendation to the hearing examiner. And if they're making a recommendation without sufficient information and their application is still insufficient, there's unlikely that they would give a recommendation in support of this application. So it's still a very complicated process, but the plan application process has been slowed down. The fourth thing I just want to mention is I think people saw the article by David Dorsey in Gulf Shore Business News, which has created a bit of a stir. We knew all along that the representatives of the attorney and the planner engineers for South Seas were working with the county attorney's office primarily in changing our code, our Captiva code, to allow for increased height and density on Captiva long before we knew anything about it. And we
Well,
were
in fact, before they bought it, there were meetings, weren't there?
before they bought it, and from the period of, say, January of 2023 to June 2023, when it was became public, there were a series of meetings and exchanges of emails. And and what David Dorsey got his hands on, and which we also have, were exchanges of emails between the county and South Seas, basically discussing how to amend the Captiva code. And, how they would process these changes. And we have emails from the county saying, we don't have any pride of authorship, why don't you help us draft this language? This is all before we knew about it. And what David Dorsey basically focused on is that when they appeared before the Board of County Commissioners, not only was the county saying this, but South Seas was repeating this almost as a mantra, that these were county-initiated amendments, when in fact the emails and David Dorsey's arguments strongly show or suggest that these were not county-initiated. These were initiated by the new owners of South Seas to make these changes happen.
Right, well, remember, the whole story was, these are county-initiated changes in the county's effort to determine how resiliency can be improved following the hurricane.
Right.
That was how it was presented to the public.
Correct. And
why they were able to proceed in the manner that they did.
That's correct. And what the emails and David Dorsey's article reflects is that it was a South Seas initiated set of amendments for the purposes of increasing height and density on South Seas. And what our lawyers are now looking at is whether or not there's something unlawful about the fact that these amendments were mischaracterized, mislabeled, and the public was misled, arguably misled, with respect to whether they were developer initiated or county initiated. And the reason that's important is, had they been developer initiated or have been characterized as developer and labeled correctly as that, they would have been required, before any of this went to the Board of County Commissioners, to hold a public information meeting about exactly what they were doing on Captiva. And then the Board of County Commissioners would have seen the reaction of the community prior to those amendments appearing before them in final form on June 6th. And therefore, there would have been a lot of, the county commissioners would have known that there was, the community did not want to see this happen. There would have been a lot of further scrutiny about it. There would have been a lot of discussion before it was in final print. Final print, by the way, that was never changed after June 6th. And so there was a process problem here by characterizing them as county initiated. Whether that constitutes something that's unlawful is what our attorneys are looking at right now, to see if there is some sort of action that can be brought that would invalidate these code amendments because the processes were not properly followed, because the amendments themselves were mischaracterized and therefore bypassed or avoided having that public meeting on Captiva before it went to the Board of County Commissioners. I don't know the answer to that. That's obviously a bad look, and it was obviously wrong. And whether it's unlawful still remains to be seen. And so that's the fourth thing I just wanted to report. And that pretty much sums up where we are. In terms of our fundraising effort, we've had over 600 contributors to the Protect Captiva Legal Fund, and we've raised well over $550,000 so far. Okay.
Well, it's certainly an incredible level of evidence that the community is behind this, this effort. Remarkable.
David, when May 24th, it's the hearing, is that what that is?
there are two things that happened on May 24th. The county has to respond to our complaint on the settlement agreement, the 9/12. And on May 24th is the date that we have to file our petition, which we had filed with the county and the Department of Commerce. We then file that commission with the administrative law judge. And then he will set a trial schedule for that petition.
Okay, thank you.
David, there is a question in the chat. We have great arguments to challenge the South Seas request for increased density, but what is the likelihood that the height ordinance will be reversed?
I'm sorry, that a what?
The height ordinance will be reversed.
The height ordinance outside the gate of Captiva?
The question is just the height ordinance. I don't know which one they want.
Yeah, well, that's the one. Well, there were two. On South Seas, the ordinance allows them to go between 45 and 75 feet above base flood. Outside the gate of Captiva, they increased heights from 28 feet above base flood to 35 feet above base flood, which arguably can add another story and go from 2 stories to 3 stories. We have also claimed that in the petition before the administrative law judge, that amendment to the height limitations outside the gate of South Seas is inconsistent with the historical development pattern on Captiva and inconsistent with the Lee plan. And we're trying to get that height change back to what it was before. And that's part of our claim before the administrative law judge. So if we succeed before the administrative law judge, the new height limits on outside the group on the rest of the Captiva is the challenge, and hopefully we can get that reversed. But I just don't know the answer of if we will succeed in that.
Hey, David, it's Bruce here. So there's a number of at least 3 I can think of, and possibly more, lots that have been cleared, and it looks like construction is imminent. Are they able to build to the 35-foot above base flood elevation right now? Like, forget about South Seas, just someone building a house on a lot.
I'd hate to say publicly the answer is yes, but the answer publicly is yes.
Okay, well, I would have thought so. So there's a window of opportunity for people here.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
There is, if they work hard at it and plan it correctly and everything, they can build 35 feet above base flood. Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's, the other important piece of why we're objecting to this. It's not just what's going to happen at South Seas, but it's the whole precedent-setting nature of this.
Absolutely.
If South Seas is able to do this, then, it would seem like almost anything's fair game elsewhere in Captiva.
Yeah.
There are 2 issues that are important. One is that if South Seas is able to build up to 45 to 75 feet above base flood and can put on, and there's no limitation on hotel rooms, there's going to be pressure from developers to do that outside the gate of South Seas. And they're going to say, hey, if South Seas can do it, why can't we? We're going to buy a big property, or we'll buy Jensen's, and we want to have what they have. That's a hard argument to fight against. And I can tell you that if you can do that on Captiva, there's going to be developers on Sanibel that are going to start saying, hey, if Captiva can do it, why can't Sanibel do it? And now Sanibel has a plan, and they have a city council that is devoted and committed and will do everything possible to maintain their Sanibel plan and their height limitations and their density limitations. But who needs that pressure? You know what I mean? Who needs that pressure from people who want to develop? And there's a very strong development lobby in Florida. So, I mean, these are all very important issues. The 35 feet above base flood outside the gate of South Seas for the rest of Captiva, which Bruce just mentioned, makes no sense. That it's not like South Seas needed that. it had nothing to do with South Seas. This was just the county trying to make Captiva consistent with the rest of Lee County on residential dwelling units, just because consistency was easier to enforce. It made no sense. No one on Captiva was asking for it, and no one understands exactly why they had to do it. Other than that just made life easier, but you had one standard. But the idea of a single standard for a barrier island and for agricultural where there's no Gulf around makes no sense. And so that's one of the reasons we're challenging it.
Does anyone have any further questions for David? David, any further comments you'd like to make?
Well, I'm sure I ran out of words. I'm wordless at this point.
Well, David, I know I speak for the community and how much we thank you for, leading this effort. I can't begin to comprehend the amount of effort that, you're personally devoted to this, and I know your community thanks you.
Yeah, people have to understand that this is really a collective effort. I mean, the 12 associations plus the other 9 or 10 timeshare associations are in complete unity and supporting the work here. They're making financial contributions. They've hired their own attorney, which they're financing, and they're working very closely with the Protect Captiva attorney. So it's really a wonderful process. The city of Sanibel has been as supportive as any municipality could ever be, and the unity between the two islands are palpable. And so it's been a great, other than the fact that this is horrible for our barrier island, it's the result has been a level of cohesiveness and unity and collectivity working together that we've never experienced before. And it's really a nice feeling to know that how much people care about this island and are willing to work together to protect it.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I don't have this on the agenda right now, but I thought I should report on it briefly. At the last meeting, I informed the panel that I had interest in doing a preliminary survey of Captiva residents as to see if there would be any appetite for a possible consolidation of the cities of Sanibel and Captiva as a means of protecting us from the future from additional actions by the Board of County Commissioners, who seems more concerned with development than retaining the historical character of our island. So the thought process was that if our land use policy could be under the control of someone like Sanibel, we would be much more likely to get favorable land use policy outcomes than if we continue to be part of unincorporated Lee County. So over the past few weeks, I, along with help from some others, drafted a proposed survey which made some assumptions that assumed that if the two areas were merged, that Captiva would continue to be managed according to the Captiva plan, that if we annex with Sanibel, we would be managed by our plan, not Sanibel's plan. It made reference to there would probably not be a significant impact in property taxes if the two cities were to merge. It also said we would probably have representation from Captiva on the city council. I took that survey to the city council at their meeting last Tuesday. I wanted to get their input on the advisability of doing such a survey, because I didn't want to do anything that might impact them in some unfavorable way that I wasn't perceiving. So I presented the survey to them at the council meeting, and there was quite a bit of concern amongst the council members about doing the survey, and particularly in the way it was worded. They were concerned that Sanibel residents would, of course, even though it was just designed for Captiva residents, that Captiva or Sanibel residents would see this survey and they would start making assumptions that the city council had all agreed to all of these things that were in the survey that, you know, we told people to make assumptions about. And they felt that could potentially cause, you know, a lot of backlash in the community if the survey was written as I had done it. So we concluded that meeting by saying that, you know, I understood their concerns. You know, they've been a great partner with us throughout this whole battle. And I didn't want to do anything that was going to be a concern to council. So we left the meeting saying that we would continue to look at other ways of doing the survey that, you know, might help reduce the risk of Sanibel people, you know, starting to react to this and creating negative publicity, making all sorts of assumptions about what the Sanibel City Council, you know, might have agreed to. Well, that was my take. David, you were there with me. Do you have any other comment you'd like to make on what happened?
Not really, other than I think that there was concern that the survey would be misunderstood and misinterpreted as that some of the assumptions that Jay put in the survey, which is basically that we would maintain, and we talked about it at our panel meeting, that we want to maintain our own code, land development code, and our own plan. You know, we keep our same identity and have significant or appropriate representation on a city council. Those are the things that Jay wanted to basically ask our Captiva community if those things could happen. And he was saying they haven't happened. These are just would be negotiable. But if those things could happen in a way that would satisfy Captiva residents, would they be interested in us going forward and just continue to do fact finding, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there was a concern, and I think it was a legitimate concern that people on Captiva and people on Sanibel would see that as the result of discussions that had already taken place, and that these things, these quote assumptions, just for survey purposes, were sort of already agreed to, and nothing could be further from the truth. There's been no discussions or agreements about any of this stuff. It was just to take the temperature of Captiva residents. But given the fact that there was room for a misunderstanding, I think it was prudent to basically go back to the drawing boards and figure out a way to make sure that there would be no misunderstandings in the future, no misinterpretation, and that no controversy would be created over something that there should be no controversy about. So anyway, so we went back to the drawing boards, and I think it was a very useful, honest discussion of how you present things to the public. So in a political situation, that it's clearly understood. And I think we all learned something from it. And I think coming away from the meeting, I think all of us believe that the working together of Sanibel and Captiva, the cohesiveness that has developed is something that's really the priority for us. And we just want to make sure that if we even look at annexation as a possible option, that we want to do it in the best way possible so that everybody understands exactly what we're doing, and more importantly, exactly what we're not doing.
Right. And, you know, I just want everybody to be clear too, that, you know, I am not at this point in favor of annexation. All I'm in favor of it's probably something that should be studied to protect Captiva long-term from additional actions at the county, like we just experienced. It's just, it would be an enormously complicated undertaking, to get all this done. And again, I don't have any predisposition that this would be a good move to take, nor do I want to imply that the community would think that. I was just trying to get some indication that people would at least be receptive to the idea before we started investing a lot of work in this. So,
Right, there could be a lot of positive things that could result from annexation. Obviously, the closer relationship to the people who would be leading and governing the body, we would have representatives who we know would be on the city council, probably from Captiva itself. And there are concerns that the community has, which are legitimate concerns. There are concerns that Sanibel community would have. Do we really want to tie in with Captiva when they got all this now increased density and building heights and more wastewater if this can go forward? So there's a lot of issues for both Sanibel and Captiva. And I think what Jay just said is sort of raises the issue. He basically said here that he doesn't have a predisposition one way or the other, but you can see how people would think he did, or
yeah,
that
regardless of what I say in the survey,
what you say, because you're doing this. And so we need to think through a little bit about how you do this, making sure that everybody understands the limitations of what we're doing at what point and what we're trying to accomplish and not. And there's a lot of room when you do public things for misunderstanding. And that's the last thing we want. We all know what happened back in the year 2000 when there was an incorporation attempt on Captiva, and everybody knows the debates. And I think that's, I look at Sandy when I say that. A debate is a nice word about what took place with incorporation back in 2000. And we don't want any repeat of that at all. We want whatever we do, we're going to do as a unified community. If we do nothing, it'll be unified. If we do something, it'll be unified. And I think the same thing would be true on Sanibel. So we just want to make sure we don't make any of the mistakes that were made in the past and just do this in the most transparent, honest, open way possible. And that's the problem. Sandy has something.
I have a question. I didn't see what that survey looked like. Did you send it out? Maybe I just didn't see.
No, I didn't, Sandy. My plan was to have the city council look at it, and then if they were all right, then I was going to present it at today's meeting to get authorization from the panel to send it out.
But we just took 4 steps back. And so I think going forward, it makes sense to work with Sanibel City staff and make sure that we don't do anything that in any way is not acceptable to Sanibel. And then we'll do the same thing at this end, and we'll make sure everybody's on the same page before we even think about putting something out. And that's
sure. I would just like some buy-in, excuse me, but I would like some buy-in. We're on the panel. And so that would be, because we might have some thoughts too.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely, Sandy. If they would have gone along with it, that you would have gotten a copy of the survey, and we would have had a long discussion today, to get the panel's input on the survey as well.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a FEMA. Oh, is this the flood insurance update, David? Do you have something on that?
I actually do. I've been advised by the county that Senator Rick Scott has been working very hard and long on this flood insurance, national flood insurance issue, and that the way it's set up at this point is that the county has until June 10th to respond to the request that FEMA made regarding the issues of permits and 50% rule and all of that created this controversy in the beginning, where FEMA basically said that they're going to remove the 25% discount for insurance for Lee County and for some of the municipalities. And so the county has been working with FEMA, answering FEMA's questions to try to explain to FEMA how they've been not violating the FEMA rules with respect to flood insurance. And they have until June 10th to provide FEMA with their information. And then after June 10th, FEMA will probably have around 30 days to respond to the information that the county is providing and the municipalities are providing to FEMA. And my understanding from the report I received that the county is optimistic that the information they're providing to FEMA will allow them to reinstate or keep the 25% insurance discount for Lee County. And so they, like I say, they are optimistic, and we'll know more about 30 days from June 10th, whether or not that issue, this about our Lee County flood discounts, flood insurance discounts will be resolved. But the county believes it's making progress, and they're optimistic that things will be reinstated as they were.
Okay. Next up, Sunset Captiva Crosswalk.
Yeah,
Dave, that sounds like you again, and John Jensen, maybe?
Nothing actually has happened, but something has happened. The staff person, Jillian Scholler, who's in charge of crosswalks for the Department of Transportation.
David, you might start off with explaining what that crosswalk would be.
John, you want to do that?
Yeah, what we're looking at is putting a crosswalk from Sunset Captiva Bayside condos straight across over to the homes on the Gulf side.
So this would be a crosswalk across Captiva Drive, is that?
Right across Captiva Drive, yeah. Just south of.
It would have one of those stop signs for pedestrians in it, and
I don't know exactly what they provide or how they handle it, but definitely where I would think would be the stripes in the crosswalk where you have to stop if somebody's getting ready to cross the road. Mm-hmm. So that would be just south of Jensen's Marina right there.
Right.
Get extra signs because they seem to knock them over up here. But
okay.
I still think it makes a great awareness for the people in the crosswalk, and DOT, whoever has been replacing them if they get knocked down. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jillian Scholler has advised us that they're sending their team out, and this was about 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. Within 30 days, they will, within 30 days of about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, they will get back to us and let us know whether it's feasible. Remember, we discussed it's got to be far enough away from a stop sign, and so that cars can stop after they go through it, etc. And so they are actually doing a feasibility study. They're sending people out to look at it. They got to send them out from Lee County. And John, they should have an answer, and you and I maybe will meet with them, but within say about 2 weeks, we should have an answer as to whether it's feasible to put this, the crosswalk in.
Okay, great. Yeah, just let me know if you hear anything, and I'll be available.
That's great. Okay.
I assume that they're not doing anything based upon the number of people going back and forth right now, correct? It's just feasibility from the other traffic items.
I don't, I don't know the answer to that. What she's looking at, she said, is the feasibility of the actual logistics of being able to put a crosswalk at that location. whether or not at some point, if it's feasible, there's gonna be a request as to how much it gets used and how important is it to have, et cetera. That has not been part of the discussion. I don't know whether they'll ask that question, but if they do, I'm sure that John and the board and of the two associations will be happy to meet with her on that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hey, anything further on that topic?
No.
Okay, I guess next is wastewater update. Don't have much of an update to give you, but I have some issues clarified in my mind that I hope I can get the panel to understand with this this project. The remaining study to be completed by the city of Sanibel is the economic study, which would involve, what kind of rates would we pay if we were to partner with Sanibel. I also thought that this study would indicate some sort of a payment that Captiva people would have to make to buy into use of the Donax facility, given all the prior investment that's been, made there. I was meeting with Sanibel city attorney on this, however, and he informed me that it's not legal for them to make a one-time charge. So that what we're going to get out of this is just a rate analysis, I guess. And so that we would not, in fact, have some significant, charge Captiva people would have to make just to access, use of the facility. So that study is going to be done in the next few weeks here, but it's possible now to say where we are, total cost wise for the Sanibel partnership plan. We completed, that's over 2 years ago now, what the design of the Captiva collection system would look like, which was basically gravity lines in the village area, and then high pressure lines going down Captiva Drive, and then high pressure lines connecting the large lots in Captiva to our gravity systems in the village area, high pressure systems in the large lot area outside of the village. So that total price tag then was $20 million for the collection system. Then Sanibel did a study which indicated to them that they would have to run an additional pipe to handle our effluent from Blind Pass to hook up with Donax. That would be a cost of approximately $14 million if that pipe was sized to handle only wastewater from Captiva outside of South Seas. And then they also, the other study they completed was, what do we do with the, increased processed wastewater that's going to come out of Donax because they process Captiva's wastewater. And that cost was estimated to be $25 million. So right now we're at a total project cost of $59 million to do the Sanibel partnership. This would service approximately 600 properties, all the Captiva properties outside of South Seas, for a cost per property of about $100,000, which, seems to me to be a very, very high figure, and one that would be very difficult to gain support, amongst the community, for. So I think if this project's going to go anywhere, we're going to have to get substantial public funding. And so we're at the point now where I think we have to determine, do we have any chance of getting, substantial public funding to help us with this project. Then we also have the matter of what ultimately happens, at South Seas. Based on what I know, if Timbers were to be successful and manage to get, their PUD approved as they're proposing it now with all this additional density, they would have to undertake a significant increase or pay for a significant increase in the capacity of the FGA plant that services South Seas. So, there is a scenario whereas if they had to do something very significant with the plant to service additional density on Captiva, maybe it would make sense to, if they're going to be completely redoing that plant, that a South Seas solution could turn out to be more cost effective than the Sanibel, solution. And you might have, the Timbers people, making a very substantial contribution to this. So I've got, the cost issue up in the air now, and how much public funding might we get? Plus, should we just continue to go on assuming that FGA is going to service whatever happens in South Seas, and we should just go on with a plan to provide sewer service for Captiva outside of South Seas? Anybody have any questions about what I've said so far? Or you all think you're following me?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, you're fighting them every step of the way about their development, but then now you're talking about, asking.
Yeah, which is entirely inconsistent, right? Yeah.
It's a little, if I were them, I'd be going like, wow. But let's not even talk about that right now, but or their future development. Let's just focus on ourselves. And I'm wondering, because of the water quality issues and everything, and if there isn't some money that we can get from state or federally to pay for this, because they're very clear that they don't really want people on septic systems on barrier islands.
Right.
And I think we stand a really good chance. And John Talmadge, really has a good handle on all the grants that are out there and available as part of.
Now, who is John Talmadge, Sandy?
John Talmadge is Lee County Economic Development.
Okay.
And he is part owner of some of the restaurants on Sanibel, because Melissa Talmadge is his ex-wife. And so he's still part owner, and he's probably one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. So if anybody has a good handle on what funding is out there, I would say John would be the one to talk with. And but there's more money available that I'm hearing as part of this whole Resilient Lee.
Right.
But the problem with so much of that has been because it's been HUD money for, people that in economic. And so it's a hard sell saying that we're, economically in need, because we have affordable housing, et cetera. But there are other areas within that whole Resilient Lee that we might be able to tap into. And I just know enough to be dangerous at this point, but I would suggest really going to John Talmadge with that and just ask him what kind of funds, because he used to work.
Sandy, would I go to him first, or would I go to Kevin Wayne first to see how much?
He's county staff. I'd go right to John Talmadge. He'd pretty much tell you where to go and who to call and see if there's any funding out there. It'd be well worth, and he's very, if you email him, or I could actually email and connect the two of you.
Okay.
If you want me to, but he has a really good handle. He used to work out of Washington, DC. So it's in that, I would go that route, because that could be a huge thing for all of us to get some federal and state funding for this.
Okay, so you think we could, are you going to be around the next month? Could you help me pursue this, get a meeting like this and
Sure, I'd be more
Help
than
explain
happy
it to
to
them.
do
Okay.
that because it really is for the public good.
Yeah,
It really is. But
absolutely.
I agree that if it's $100,000 price tag, it probably won't pass.
Right.
And so we need to figure out a different way. And even at best, if we decided today to go forward, it's probably 5 years before it would actually be, we would be hooking up to anything.
Yeah,
My
well,
guess.
at
A
least
long-
3 year, yeah, and if they're telling me 3, it probably is 5, you know,
You
so.
never know, but
Yeah.
I'll be glad to connect you on that one.
Okay, I appreciate that, Sandy. That's great advice. And I guess there's just no way we can, I think, put you know, South Seas into this mix. It just gets so complicated, you know, and again, how do you secure cooperation with somebody you're at war with anyway? So.
You know, Sandy mentioned this and Jay, you mentioned it. People have to remember that the quote South Seas wastewater treatment plant is not South Seas.
Yeah, it's
That is a
Right.
Florida governmental utility authority, and South Seas doesn't own that. South Seas is just a customer, just like everybody else on South Seas is a customer, just like the Sanibel people are customers of the Donex plant. So it'll be the job of the utility to either be able to serve an expanded density on South Seas or not be able to serve it. If they have an obligation to serve it because they have the franchise, they will have to harden the plant or raise the plant or expand the plant or increase the treatment levels of the plant that are required by DEP and federal and state law. And so it's not like we're looking for the cooperation of anyone at this point. It's a utility company. And my understanding also is that FGUA may not be the owner of that plant going forward. There's discussion at the county now of having someone else take over that plant because the FGUA usually runs distressed plants. And if this plant is rebuilt and is expanded or hardened, it may not be FGUA that uses it or that owns it. And then the question is, will DEP or the Army Corps of Engineers allow for an expanded plant in the middle of a
Right. Protected, ecological area.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to be said for everybody hooking up to Donex at some point. And I think that's going to have to be looked at carefully. In terms of the funding, my understanding, Jay, and I think we heard this, that Sanibel has submitted a grant request for the full amount of the injection well, the deep injection well,
Right.
which was $25 million
Right.
for the expanded.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. I appreciate that.
So that's $25 million taken off the top right there. And then, so I think Sandy's right. There is other funding opportunities, and I think it behooves us at this point to see if we can get as much, if not all, of the sewer infrastructure costs funded by funds that are earmarked for septic to sewer.
Right.
So we know the injection well is already being, a request with respect to that is already happening. And I think it's important that we keep the disagreement with us and South Seas about density and heights totally separate from the wastewater treatment issue. I think that they're two separate things, and you know, we can disagree with them about height, and we can still have the same wastewater treatment plant processing all the wastewater, because again, that plant is not in any way owned by South Seas.
Right.
It's a customer in the same way that we would be.
Thank you. I didn't know that, so I'm glad for the clarification. So that it makes much more sense now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, anything further on wastewater?
Yes, I would like to mention that there has been such an advancement in techniques on how
Oh
to
yeah,
treat.
Marguerite, thanks for bringing this up. Please explain that to the panel.
Well, on a lot of people on Captiva have the old septic system with a drain field, but now they have new technologies. They are like miniature water treatment centers, and they work like a water treatment center, but made miniature so that you can have it for your private home. They also offer them in a little bigger for like a community, like Sunset Captiva could have a community system. The water that comes out is nitrogen free, can be used to water to irrigate plants. Anyway, I just wanted to mention it, and it might even be that we do no, that maybe the village, if they enlarge the treatment center that is on Captiva, if that's being rebuilt, maybe it makes sense to annex the city and then the long stretch, not to have all the piping.
Right.
That maybe those people are better off having their little water treatment centers. There's a company called Fuji Clean is the name. And as far as I know, they have the latest technology.
Right, Marguerite,
have-
I appreciate you bringing that up, because that is another, potential scenario, but then that brings you back into having some dependence on what happens, with FGUA. But there is definitely a scenario where FGUA could be expanded to handle the village area. And then all the large lots outside of the village would have an AWT, treatment system, such as the one you're outlining that's available from Fuji, as a way to significantly reduce the cost of the whole
Yeah,
project.
we have an older system at our house. We've had it for almost 20 years. It's incredible. It needs more servicing than the new technology. The reason we have this technology is that drinking water has become so expensive. So worldwide, people put their minds on it and develop this. So I just wanted to mention it. I'm obviously partisan because we have one and I think it works great. And the
Right.
technology is even so much better now. And I think it might be helpful. It's definitely better than the archaic septic systems, and they are still being built. When I see the new septic drain fields going up, I'm like, wow, why? Yeah.
Yeah, they should be AWT systems, anybody that's putting in a new one, but that's not the way it's working. A lot of new conventional systems are going into place. So, but Sandy, I think the way I would view that is, I still think my next step is, following up Sandy's idea to try to get an understanding of funding assistance that'll be available, and also trying to follow up with, maybe in fact we won't have to pay for that $25 million injection well, and maybe we can find a way to have everybody be on central wastewater at a reasonable cost.
Well, the way they told us with Resilient Lee was that the $1.2 billion was potentially just a start of the funding that could happen afterwards. So the first ask was that amount, and that money has already been applied for, and I don't think it's been given out yet, but it's been all applied for, and that little pool of money, or big pool of money, is probably all accounted for. But what we were told was that there could be more funding available in the future. And so that's kind of the area that I would like to try to tap into. If indeed it's possible, I have no clue,
Right.
We can at least give it a good shot.
Absolutely, Sandy, thank you. Okay, let's move on. Where are we? Sorry, folks, I'm losing my order of notes.
The next thing is just stormwater.
Stormwater, right.
Right.
David, you have a couple of things to say about that, I think.
Well, we know that the $200,000, actually $250,000, I believe, was submitted to HUD for a block grant to pay for the wastewater, for the stormwater plan in the village. And my understanding that funding request has been made to HUD, and it's going through the process. The problem we had with that is that the block grant bidding process would preclude Kimley Horn, who developed the proposal, from bidding on the project. And so we've spoken to the county, and they're trying to work it out so that Kimley Horn can apply to do that engineering study for the stormwater management system in the village. And I'm still waiting to hear how that is going to happen. But at this point, we're on track to get the funding, but we want to have Kimley Horn do the proposal since we've worked with them on the scope and what we need. And it sort of will be unfair for them not to be able to do the project. So
Right, I agree completely with that.
we're waiting to hear from that. We should know by the next panel meeting whether that gets resolved.
Okay, iguanas.
Yeah. They're Alfredo's going at it. He said most of all the females have laid all their eggs. So but they should start getting more active, and he's still going strong and getting quite a few of them.
Do we have any sense that the iguana situation is improving at all since we began this program with Alfredo?
You know, I feel it's helping, and you saw the pictures with all the eggs.
Yeah.
You know, he got over 200 eggs just that
Looked
one
like a lot
day.
of eggs, but then I don't know how many iguanas there are running around.
Yeah, I don't know how you you know, what's the percentage of what's out there, but you know, it's got to be helping. So you know, I feel just driving around the island, it seems to be better. It's not getting any worse.
Does anybody else on the panel have any iguana perceptions of what the current state is of iguanas?
I feel personally that I see as many as before, but at the same time, I'm convinced that Alfredo definitely puts a damper on it. But it's like a cancer. We take out the tumor, but it has metastasized, and it's almost impossible to eradicate it.
Yes.
Yeah, the only other way, you'd have to have him come out more days, and I don't think we need to do that right now. I think 2 days a week is you know, with the money, we're at a good spot right now. We'll see. Just keep an eye on it.
I mean, I guess a question though is if he's coming out 2 days a week and catching 30 a week, like until we see the numbers going down, it's hard to believe. Maybe we're stopping it growing, but I don't know if we're making any progress. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, we took a year off.
Right.
You know, we didn't have the funding. We took a year off, and I think we saw where they increased when Alfredo wasn't coming out.
Yeah.
Just an observation there. So that's a pretty good test for, you know, from that. So yeah, I think, yeah, it's hard to, unless you do an iguana count, you know, that'd be pretty impossible. Yeah, I think we got to keep on top of it. You know, Sanibel does it. You know, Marco Island, Boca Grande, they all have you know, iguana control. So,
Do you know if anybody's having more success than we are with iguana control?
well, I know when Alfredo's able to use a gun on Captiva. Where he goes to Marco, he can't use a gun down there. He has to snare them, and they still have him do it, but he doesn't feel it's not near as good as when you can shoot them. Most of the iguanas he gets is from shooting. Then we could start the tournament too, the iguana kill
Yeah,
tournament.
I think that's a tremendous fundraising opportunity for
Yeah.
Yeah, the Captiva Iguana Hunt Club.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see the trophy.
And then we,
Yeah.
And the t-shirts. The t-shirts too.
we could cook them. We can have a some sort of buffet with the iguanas.
Right, exactly.
Have a winning recipe. Yeah.
Ken Goodham, have we gotten any reimbursement for the iguana monies from the
No.
county?
It's
Okay,
gone from being delayed to being ignored. So I'm assuming that we're not going to get any money out of the county.
could you send me exactly what's owed to us and the dates that it's owed, and it's so I can go and knock on some doors, because it was promised. And when somebody promises payment, we expect to get it.
I will send you that after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, next on our list was Development Committee. Ann Brady. Ann is not with us today. I don't suspect anything has changed significantly since the last meeting. Ken, do you want to spend just a second taking us through the numbers?
Really nothing to explain. We're at the usual expenses. Our fundraising is slowed because we're not asking people, but we've got a fairly good sized reserve.
Right.
And our discussion was to look at doing something in the fall and perhaps doing something tied to iguanas.
Okay. All right, any other comments, issues panel members would like to raise?
Mm-mm. No. No.
Anything from the audience that we have not addressed?
Not really. We had a couple of anonymous questions, but which we're not answering.
I'm sorry, Ken, say that again.
We had one or two anonymous questions which we're not answering.
Oh, we're not.
Well, that was your policy a couple of meetings ago.
That's right. In other words, we don't. You have to identify who you are before we'll take your question.
Right.
Okay. Well, I guess if we have nothing else, it's time to adjourn the meeting.
Jay, can I just say
Yeah,
about this?
sure, certainly.
Yeah, we're a quasi-public organization. We're governed by sunshine. And if you go to any public meeting, any hearing, any public meeting in terms of zoning, or even a county commissioners meeting or a city council meeting, before you can ask a question or you identify yourself. And so that's the policy that's done in all public meetings, governmental, quasi-governmental, and sunshine meetings. So we're just maintaining that policy. A couple of meetings ago, we had a lot of some anonymous questions that weren't particularly reasonable questions. Some of them were inappropriate, and so I think we're just now following the policy that every governmental, quasi-governmental organization follows. If you have a question, just identify yourself, and we'll answer any question, no matter how difficult it may be.
And actually, with that, one of the questions came back with an ID on it, so I can now ask it. Is there any opportunity to reduce the speed limit from the stop sign at Jensen's Marina North, where there is almost no room to walk without being on the road? 25 miles an hour is really too fast. It's a very congested area, and 15 to 20 miles an hour would be more reasonable. That, I believe, is a DOT decision to make, but the question, I guess, would be to ask them.
I don't think it's a bad idea because between coming from the stop sign and going around by green flash and those two hard, hairpin turns, if you're trying to go too fast, you come around, somebody could be jogging or walking or bike. I'm very careful when I go past green flash to really slow down coming back from the post office. It's pretty tight.
Mhm.
We had, that came up once before, and we had some discussions with Lee County about whether they can go below 25. And I just can't recall whether they said they can't or what the issues were. But it's certainly, I think it's a good question, and I think we should ask it and see what the answer is.
Mhm.
We're talking to the DOT about the crosswalks, so we'll have an opportunity to ask the question with someone who's working at Captiva now.
Yeah.
You think you could get some direction on that as you're working on the crosswalk, David? Is that what you said, or?
I'll see, John and I will talk to her and see what they say.
Yeah.
Okay,
The related issue, because it's in the same location, pretty much.
right.
Would you say like from Jensen's on the Gulf, maybe all the way to South Seas or the end of the road? I wonder which stretch you would want to the lower speed limit.
I think from South Seas to Jensen's on the beach is the village. It's
The village. Yeah, the village.
And at worst case, you could put a sign, just approaching the village, watch for pedestrians and bicyclists. So let's say you couldn't get DOT to agree to lower it, but you could put some caution signs up, letting people know, because I've seen a couple of close calls. I know you all have too. And there's just no room when you have a big truck going around and you've got a bicyclist coming around. It's kind of scary. So I think it's a reasonable request.
Yeah. And right now it's 25 through the village. Yeah. Okay.
So we
Hey,
would
you
want
could
to take
also-
it to 20, is that right?
What?
Would we want to take it to 20 miles an hour in the village, or?
We'll see what they say. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Working on Sandy's point, you could have a sign say congested area, use extreme caution or something if we can't get the speed limit moved.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll talk to the DOT about it. Yeah.
Okay,
I think what would be also helpful is the drains that they have on the stretch from the stop sign to South Seas on both sides. The one on the right side, they are like a couple of inches higher than the pedestrian safety lane itself.
Mm-hmm.
So bicyclists, people with kids and dogs and strollers, they always have to drive on the road. And I don't know why they can't be plain, why they can't be plain with a street, why they have to stick out so high, unless it's to catch sand. But on the other side, there are a few that are not sticking up, and it's easy to ride over them. But I see it all the time and experience it myself. You just can't, you have to go into the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Marguerite, we have actually engineering plans for the sidewalk that runs from South Seas all the way to the Andy Rossi, where everybody would have their strollers and their walking on the one side of the road, this side on the Rauschenberg, on the I guess the west side, and that's been put on hold because we were doing the sewer project. And so, but we do have the engineering for that. And so I think part of what we should look at is put that back on the table. We want to do it all at the same time. We don't want to have to dig up the roads and dig up the drains. And now we got a stormwater project too, where we'd have a different drainage system. So I think we have to coordinate the wastewater, the stormwater, and the sidewalk all together again, and see if we can figure out how to do it in tandem. Not going to be easy, but I think that's what we
yeah, you
Yeah,
had
it was not a It was not a thoughtful design to begin with.
So,
Whoever built it that way did not think about the consequences.
well, that's gonna be changed. It's a very rudimentary stormwater system that obviously will be changed as a result of the stormwater management study we're about to undertake.
Good.
All right.
David, I know that you had funds committed from quite a while ago to pay for a sidewalk project. I assume those funds have forever disappeared somewhere in the bowels of Lee County, or?
Well, Lee County funded all the engineering studies.
Yeah,
associated.
right.
And then it was, at that time, it was about $390,000 to $400,000 to build a sidewalk. And we basically put that on hold because we were doing the sewer project.
Right.
And so I guess, yeah, my guess is that money's not sitting in a bank account waiting for us at this point.
Right, right. Okay, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Thanks for
Second.
keeping it on time, Jay. You're good to your promise. Thank you.
All righty, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.